Most recently, she served as the Executive Vice President and Head of Corporate Social Responsibility at Northern Trust Chicago. She's also a 2-term past National Board President of Girl Scouts of the USA. She also serves on myriad other civic and charitable boards, including the American Cancer Society, Leadership Greater Chicago, McCormick Theological Seminary, Obama Foundation's Inclusion Council, Chicago Urban League, and the Executives Club of Chicago, to name but a few. She's also an advisor for the inaugural cohort of the University of Chicago's Leadership and Society Initiative. That's an initiative designed to empower individuals to live more meaningful, connected, and fulfilling lives, and to help society by equipping those individuals with new knowledge, connections, and strategies to drive significant positive impact for society. When describing her participation in the initiative, my guest stated, "The opportunity to have an experience that allows one to embrace this season of life while continuing to leverage experience and skills is of great benefit to both the participant and society." Please join me and my very, very special guest, the unsinkable Connie Lindsey, in the arena right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Connie Lindsey, our paths, well, my path with you. You were very busy 14 years ago when I got here to Chicago, doing amazing things, but being the national board president for Girl Scouts of the USA. In 2009, 14 years ago in June, I came here to work for Girl Scouts of Greater Chicago in Northwest Indiana. And then I heard you speak. I was like, oh, she's magical. There is something about the power of storytelling. There is something about the power to move others with your words. And that's what I think every time you've spoken, you've done. So let's begin at the beginning, though.
Sure.
When and where were you born?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me in the arena. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
And it is just an honor and a pleasure to be here and to reconnect with you.
You are family, so it is always always good to much like with family, whether it's once in a year or 3 years through COVID. It immediately when we got back, we were like, yes, hi, energy. It's energy.
Sure.
Energy recognizing energy.
Sure.
So when and where were you born?
I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Those many years ago.
Okay.
And grew up there and moved to Chicago actually when I was 26.
Oh, wow.
I was working after college. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and majored in finance. And I worked for 3 years post-college at Wisconsin Bell, the old AT&T when they had all the phone companies under one.
Bell.
Exactly. So started my career there. And then at divestiture, when AT&T had to divest itself of the phone companies after years of litigation, I was asked by the individual who was going to become treasurer of what would become Ameritech, the holding company for the Midwest region, if I wanted to move to Chicago and work in the finance area. And if I may tell the story of how that relationship came, because key to me in anything that I do, Darius, is relationships. I think so much of what we do and the way that we can connect with other people really helps to enhance not just our own development and careers, but how we relate to one another. So I'm very relationship oriented. So anyway, I was a part of what we called back in those days the Progressive Managers Association. And my husband will always say that, you know, I've always been an advocate, and I have, for being the person who is advocating on behalf of those who might not be seen or heard in the same way. And so we had the Progressive Managers Association, and that was the group of Black professionals, managers at the phone company, and we were talking about pay, promotion, and profile.
Come on.
How do we gain access to higher levels of management in the organization? How to ensure that we're being paid equitably? All those kinds. And then how do we develop the profile?
DEI before it had a name.
DEI before it had a name. I was 21 years old, and so I worked with him, and he saw me doing a talk about why this was important and why it mattered to growing talent within the organization. Now, mind you, I was 21 years old, right out of college, 22, had not, I had interned at the electric company at the time, but just, I'm wired that way.
Yes.
So I was automatically just doing that work, and he saw me give a talk at one of our dinners.
At 21.
At 22 at the time.
Okay.
22.
Yeah, because that makes so much different. You're so much older now.
Oh, yeah, right. I was so much more mature. And at 22, and he said, he kept his eye on me, and I was able to get, opportunities to do other things. Now, keep in mind, I had to work hard. I had to prove myself and experienced all of the things that one experiences.
Opportunity comes with accountability.
That's it. Absolutely. And so at divestiture, I got a call from him asking me if I would be willing to move to Chicago. It was the best decision I've ever made. One of the best decisions I've ever made.
Let me take a step back because I always look for through lines. And I think it feels like the right time because apples don't tend to fall from pear trees. Tell me about the man and woman who raised you.
So my mother and father separated when I was 10 years old. So my mother raised me. My mother was always my shero. She's gone home to be with the Lord now, but she is my shero and always was. And one of the things that she wasn't real demonstrative about love. There were 6 children in our family, 2 boys and 4 girls. I'm the 5th of 6. But what she did show was resilience because we grew up poor. We didn't have a lot of resources, economic or otherwise. But one of the things that my mother would do, a favorite memory of all of us children, we couldn't travel on vacations, big vacations and that sort of thing. But she would buy, keep in context the timeline, Life magazine.
Come on.
And we would look at pictures. The big one. And we would look at the pictures, Darius, and she would talk about places that you could go and different things. It was never focused on the material things. Part of that could have been intentional on her part, but I think it was just who she was. She wanted you to understand what was possible.
The experience.
Yes. It's the I'm possible piece of that resonated. And for a time, we lived in public housing. And so in my philanthropic work, I consider myself a philanthropist, and I often say, I don't give because I have so much, but I give because I know what it feels like to have nothing. That's the core of who I am.
And it's we have so few privileges, but the privilege of servant leadership, knowing, and what keeps you, I would suspect, and others who have achieved great heights like you, is that you can close your eyes and see the space. You can see the family. You can see it. You can still feel it. And to hold yourself accountable, never getting so far away from it that you don't know. So when you say that it resonates, you're not doing it because you want to. I don't think you have a choice.
Exactly. It's compelling. And the more we do it, the better I feel. And science has done the research that when we do good things for other people, when we volunteer, it actually has a physiological impact on our bodies.
Much like trauma.
Much like trauma. It's the same,
it's
but
real.
we make a choice.
Come on.
How do we move through the trauma that we have in our lives? Are we willing to get help and support? And then what we do with that. I often say that there were people who wrote on the tablet of my heart. I'd like to tell you that Girl Scout story. Yes, I became national president of that 2.59 million member organization. But Darius, when I became a Girl Scout at my church in Milwaukee, I was 10 years old, and my mother couldn't afford to buy my uniform. But I sang in the choir of my church. And the women in our choir, who were supportive of all things about poor black children in our neighborhood in the north side of Milwaukee, helped to buy the uniform.
Of course they did.
Of course they did. And my mother lived long enough to see me become national president.
Good. Yeah, I have not met your mother, but I have met your mother. The older I get, I see my late father, I hear my mother, I see their faces, and I am, in some ways, everything they sacrifice for me, part of it is being able to go, we're doing this, we're doing this. My mom called me on this show from Detroit, because I hadn't told her for months, Connie, family. I just didn't. But one of my brothers couldn't keep a secret. So they shared it, and she called me, and my mom said to me, because she's dramatic, that's where I got it from. She's like, Darius. I said, yes, ma'am. Listen to me. I said, I've seen your show. I said, oh. She's like, no, listen. Listen to me. I was like, I was like, oh, and this is where I got this from. And she's like, I have never been more proud to call you my own. And I'm telling you, Connie, my eyes watered. The power of, and your mom, I'm sure, is looking from heaven, going, that's my baby. That's my baby. Go do it.
She gets
It's
all
the
the credit.
pride. Yeah, and you know, so let's talk about your siblings.
Sure.
Were you all close then? You were kind of the baby. Did that come with a sense of, I don't know, spoiled entitlement?
Not at all. I actually behave more like an older child.
Oh.
So 5th of 6, my oldest brother, who is in Milwaukee, he's a retired police officer. And he has 4 daughters who absolutely adore him. He's surrounded by women. So he had 4 daughters, 4 sisters, and my mom. And so he was that.
Okay.
And he was an amazing police officer. He is an amazing father and grandfather. I adore him. He was the standard for which, you know, and by which I would judge other men that I wanted to date, because he cooked.
Come on.
He did all of those things, but he also served as the role of, you know, provider for his family. But he was gentle in ways that I saw and still see. I mean, his girls adore him, and he married his high school sweetheart. I think they just celebrated their 55th wedding anniversary.
My goodness.
And my baby sister, who is Dr. Connie Lindsey, she has her PhD, and she is a professor at Elon University in North Carolina. She got her MBA and then fell in love with teaching and education. And we're going to have a conversation with her coming up soon, because she's just an amazing, and she'll watch this. And Karen, I love you, darling. This is a shout out for you.
I do too, Karen.
She's amazing. Can't wait for you to meet Dr. K. And then I have a sister who's retired. She worked in the medical profession.
Oh, come on.
And she is in Wisconsin. And then my eldest sister is in California, and she was an alcohol and other drug abuse counselor. So they all went into service professions, and I was the business person. But no, I really, in my family, the role, when we talk about family roles, more of like an older child, but I think it was because of how I absorbed and took things in as a young person.
Yeah. And I think some of us, as much as we love you, we see that now. You know, I mean, but you need that. My younger sister is similar. She's an engineer. Yeah. I'm creative. Yeah. But she was always the very youngest, 13 years after me.
Wow.
And I had 2 older siblings. Mm-hmm. And she was always, even at 8, an old soul. And she is that now. She's, even at 14, she was the adult in the room. Mm-hmm. And I suspect that you were always the adult in the room.
And my one sister, Audrey, who is 4 years older than me, she was sort of my caretaker person. She was the one who would just be there for me. I'm an introvert, and I know people don't believe that when I say that. But as you know, introversion and extroversion are defined by how you get your energy.
Yes.
And we've talked about this, you and I.
Yes,
How
we have.
we love to be alone with a cup of tea and a book, or sitting by a body of water.
Love this too.
Exactly.
Yes.
Love this too. Love. We'll do it and show up
Yes.
authentically.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that introversion, and my sister Audrey and I, once again, coming from a background where we didn't have a lot of material things, we would lay on the floor in our bedroom, and she would draw pictures for me. She's an amazing artist, and she would draw pictures of beautiful houses and families doing things, and we would do that for hours. We would walk to the library together. Our entertainment was going to the library, so I started reading when I was really, really young, and that developed, I think, my love affair with words and being able to articulate a message or to deliver it in a way that every single letter vibrates with the energy that it has, and it can land in the right place.
Come on, you know you are talking to my core Connie Lindsey.
Exactly.
Me and the words.
The words.
The first time I heard you, I was like, oh, you know what it was. And I just had this conversation with someone, and it's gonna. Well, you have connection at the Obama Center. Mm-hmm. It is what I remember when I first laid eyes on the president, and I went, we undervalue the power of words. They are things, they have power. We underestimate the power of someone. Your family knows this because they work in service and education, of tapping hope. Yes. And using the words and saying it. Words are things, they pour over you, and you have very little else. Exactly. So I go back to that first time at Girl Scouts. For anything else I knew about you, I was like, oh, that's a powerful speaker. You can move a room. You can make people feel something. And without it, without hope, without aspiration, it just feels lost.
And the distinction is, there are people who can give amazing speeches. There are wonderful speech writers, and people can do that. But even a brilliant speech delivered without the right level of passion or ethos or connection doesn't land where it should. And you can't fake that. It's not easy to fake it. I mean, there probably are some people who can. But that's not easy to do. Yeah.
You can't do it for a career.
Precisely. Yeah. Precisely.
So you went to college again. Tell me where?
University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, right down the road.
Didn't go far from home.
Understood. I want to ask you about other pieces of your life. Who is John Blackburn?
He's this guy.
Who is he? Tell me about
So
him.
John Blackburn,
This guy.
he's my husband. John and I got married in 2007. First marriage for both of us. We are child-free by choice. We love children, but we do not have children of our own. But the nieces and that I talked about
Yes.
and the nephews, those are, our babies, and we love them and I have for all of their lives for most cases. But John and I actually met at Ameritech. He worked in accounting. He's a CPA. He has his master's in taxation. He has a master's in business. And so we met. But when we first met, Darius, my rule was I don't park my car where I buy my gas, and I don't dip my pen in company ink. And so we worked together because I was in finance and he was in accounting. After I left to go to work at Northern Trust, our relationship developed even
You all
more.
actually got to know each other.
We got to know each
How
other.
about that?
Yeah.
I bet that probably works for a
about
marriage
that.
to be successful.
Well, and that's the funny thing. So we met in 1991.
Come on.
We got married in 2007. Oh. Yes.
You had all.
Because both of us were very comfortable with who we are. We were comfortable being individuals with
You
careers.
said, I'm not looking for someone to complete me.
Not at
you
all.
can't. You both came ready,
We were ready.
simmering.
Right. Economically, all the other
Good.
ways in which you come together. And the years that we dated and spent time together. And in 2005, John was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is an incurable.
2 years before your marriage.
2 years before we got married. He was diagnosed with this incurable but treatable blood cancer. And we decided that, yes, of course we loved each other unconditionally, and that we were willing to be married, form this union together, and that way we would take the journey together.
on.
And so whether we had 5 years, 5 minutes, or whatever the time was, we were going to enjoy all that life had to offer.
You chose each other.
We chose each other.
So I look to folks like you, my friend, and go, okay, what in these years since 2007, what was the biggest surprise about being married that you did not expect in both the challenging way and the extraordinary, couldn't have imagined it if I tried?
The biggest surprise about marriage for me, because I was a woman who was determined not to be married. That was not.
You said I put effort into it.
Right.
Yes.
I love the concept of it, and I'm always celebrating with people who are married. But for me, it was just not a thing that, I have to be married by 30 and all of this.
Yeah.
That's not how I ordered my life or how the Creator ordered my life for me or the way that I thought about it. But one of the biggest surprises was the ability to really hear, listen, and see each other. My husband and I are very different in basic ways in terms of he's real comfortable. He's an extrovert. So John is comfortable at a party I look like I'm comfortable and I make myself comfortable. It's not painful, but that's not my preference. I prefer a one-on-one conversation. But John is very much, he loves going and doing things, and I could stay at home and not do anything. But the surprise part of that was I became comfortable with how he got his energy and what he needed to do. And as the author Khalil Gibran says, let there be spaces in our togetherness. We can make music like the strings of a lute, I'm paraphrasing here, but when there are spaces in our togetherness, we grow so beautifully. The positive surprise is that I love someone unconditionally and he loves me unconditionally. We got married and lived the part of our vows in sickness or in health immediately.
Come on.
And this wasn't a one and done story. It's a journey because this multiple myeloma is considered treatable but incurable.
Yeah.
So all up and down the journey of John's illness and treatments and all of those things was me, staying up at night reading medical abstracts so that I could understand what questions to ask, to encourage him so that we'd be able to make this journey together. And then to become an advocate, not just for John, but for all of the people affected by cancer who might have that diagnosis. We did a lot of work in fundraising for the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation. I sit on the National Board of the American Cancer Society today. And what I learned about me in marriage and in that journey was unconditional love. And that when we say we love people, it's a verb.
Oh, come on.
It's a verb.
Oh,
It's a verb.
okay. They are going to. We knew this coming in. Okay, in November of 2021, you have had a stellar career, but you left Northern Trust. You retired in November of 2021. Stellar.
Thank you.
What prompted you to close that chapter?
Well, let's start with nomenclature. I refer to myself as being rewired.
Come on.
I often
It's the name
say-
of this show, actually.
I love that because what I say to people is, I'm not tired and I'm not going back to anything. So there's no retire. It's rewire. I'm unplugging energy from the institution of financial services, Northern Trust, where I had an amazing, wonderful career, to having a portfolio life. Just as we have investment portfolios.
Yes.
What do we put in that portfolio life that allows me to really pour passion into what I care about? Secondly, during my career at Northern Trust, I didn't live an undivided life. And what do I mean by that? I mean that even while I was doing corporate work that I loved, I was able to connect my soul with my role. So while there are very technical components of doing investments, budgeting, all of that, there was still this piece of serving in the community, that servant leadership aspect of that. And so I rewired. And what that allowed me to do then was for the boards that I served on, the nonprofit boards, was really to pour myself even more fully into them. The American Cancer Society board, for example, we're going to be doing, in partnership with the American Cancer Society on May 6th, at my church, we're doing a cancer symposium. Inviting the entire community, and it's about health, hope, and healing. So the rewirement for me, Darius, what can I pour myself, what can I give myself to fully that allows me to honor the gifts that God placed in me, but also have the impact that I want to have in the world.
And still have enough life left to enjoy it all.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw the Rewire, and I love you explaining it. But literally, the subtitle of this show is "Rewired for Success." I was like, oh, thank you for, because I was like, that is a brilliant words. We just talked about this.
matter.
Words are things. They have power and ownership of your narrative, and saying this is what it is for me, because all that matters is what it means to you.
Well, because it's so easy to become invisible, right? As soon as you say you retire, people have this view of somebody, and I'm real good at doing nothing also. There is no crime in doing that.
Absolutely.
And so when people say to me, what are you doing? I say, I'm being. I'm busy being who I'm meant to be, that quiet time, that still time, to be able to just discover what works best for me. So I'm also being and less doing. And when I am being, then I can really focus on where I'm going to have the most impact and how I affect people, not infect people with my attitude.
I talk on the other side of this break, but I have to say thank you. Thank you for ways big and small. We have worked together 14 years, and you have been kind, leading in excellence, but the conversations have always meant the most. When we weren't talking about even the business at hand or an event or a gala or fundraising or philanthropic support, when we were just talking about life and living and finding comfort in your own skin and sharing space with others. So I thank you for that. We will be right back. We're not completely done yet. We got one more segment, you and I, and it's called 3 for the Road. Stay with us.
What's going on, Chicago? I'm your host, Darius Caffey of The Table, on air where we talk about what's new, what's happening, and what's what in Black LGBTQ culture.
When people say, like, oh, I want to be like you when I grow up, I don't want anyone to be like me. I want you to be better than me.
Check us out every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on cantv.org, the CanTV app, and Channel 19 for some more conversations with our wonderful guests from around the city, both near and far.
Connie Lindsey, Rewired for Success or Continued Success. Let's do our final segment. You've watched the show. I know you have.
Absolutely.
So we're about to do 3 for the Road. I know you're ready. So let's just jump in. Question number 1. If you could have dinner with any person living or dead, who would you choose and why?
I would choose my mom. Again, one more conversation. I talk to her now in the mornings and at different times, and her energy and her spirit is always with me. But that's who I choose. We used to have the best conversations, just about everything. And she'd have wonderful sayings that stick with me today. Just so those resonate with me. It'd be my mom. Okay. One more time.
You know, I would ask it just be, I love me a good saying. I love it. And I would just say to her, what's your mom's, what's her name?
Her name was Ruth.
I would say, Miss Ruth, bravo, bravo. She's got to be so proud.
Thank you.
Yeah, good answer. Good start. Question number 2. Do you have any regrets?
I don't. Yes, I've made mistakes,
Come on.
but I also believe in failing brilliantly. And it's how we recover from those mistakes. What do we learn? Regrets? No. Because number one, I know I can't do anything over. I'm very reflective and self-aware, but I think of it in that regard.
Good. 2 for 2. Final question. Let's take it home. One piece of advice present-day Connie would have given her 21-year-old self.
Be bolder. Be braver. I was very shy and quiet as a young person, so I found my voice as I grew and as I was mentored and coached and sponsored. But yeah, that self-effacing in some ways, having the answer but not necessarily raising my hand or asserting myself. So I would say be bolder, be braver, and dare greatly.
Come on. All right. Speaking of daring greatly and giving more and rewiring what was already fantastic circuitry in the first place. We have the privilege of having on the air here that just premiered on our air Monday nights at 7:30, a fantastic new show and podcast called Joy in the Breakthrough. For the few people who may not have seen it, tell me one about the show, your co-host, and tell me two what you all hope to accomplish with this experience for our viewers.
Thank you for talking about that and for having us. Joy in the Breakthrough is a podcast, and Anna Valencia is my co-host. Anna is someone that I've mentored for many, many years, and we would have discussions about breaking through, how do we get to the other side of difficulty or challenges? And we were saying you have to be broken open to break through. So the joy in that. And so we're going to have individual conversations with people, asking them about a challenging time in their lives and how did they get to the breakthrough, and how did they find joy as they were going through that. Asking questions about careers or life experiences. For example, as I talked about my growing up, what was a breakthrough that made me realize I had to use my voice? So we're going to have those kinds of conversations. We want to offer people tips, tools, and techniques that allow them to, after that conversation, as they're listening, say, I can do that. What are the ways that we strengthen ourselves and build ourselves and maintain our mental, physical, and spiritual health as we're going through those times when we might feel broken?
Come on. Even the fun conversations, I'm looking for human connection. The introvert in me, who enjoyed a lot about being alone for those years.
Sure.
So even I know that the power of human connection and the power of storytelling, the power of removing the otherness between us. And your show, you and Anna, what you are doing here is so powerful, but I know it is going to resonate so deeply with our viewers. So thank you for that. You can watch Connie and Anna Monday nights, Joy in the Breakthrough, right here on CAN TV 19 and streaming on the new cantv.org and the all-new CAN TV Plus app. Always, thank you, my friend. You know, you can come down from Studio B where you all tape over here whenever you want.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you for everything, for 14 years worth. And as always, Chicago, let me leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of television and print journalist Germany Kent. Never underestimate the power you have to take your life in a new direction. Until next time, take good care of you and each other. Good night.